The forest stood still, black trees clawed at the night sky. A sliver of moon peeked through, casting pale, skeletal shadows. The air hung heavy, thick with the smell of damp earth and decaying leaves. It was the kind of stillness that felt alive, waiting. The forest was ancient, a place of secrets. Twisted branches, gnarled by time, whispered tales of things unseen. They spoke of the darkness that dwelled within, a darkness that had always been there and always would be. A coldness settled in the air, a promise of something sinister. The forest held its breath. The silence was broken only by the distant screech of an owl, a lonely, haunting sound. It echoed through the trees, a chilling reminder of the unseen eyes that watched from the shadows. The forest was their domain, a place where humans were but intruders, prey. This was their hunting ground, and they were hungry. A low growl rumbled through the trees. It was a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It was a primal sound filled with hunger and rage. It sent shivers down the spines of the creatures of the forest, a warning to stay hidden. The growl was followed by the sound of heavy footsteps. They moved slowly, deliberately through the undergrowth. Each step was measured, calculated, like a predator stalking its prey. The forest held its breath, listening. The creature moved like a shadow, silent and deadly. It was a master of camouflage, its dark feathers blending seamlessly with the darkness of the forest. Only its eyes, burning like hot coals, betrayed its presence, eyes that missed nothing. The creature was a hunter, born and bred in this forest. It knew every twist and turn, every shadow and every hiding place. It was the apex predator, the king of its domain, and tonight it was hunting. A group of hikers made their way along the forest path. They were young, full of life and laughter, oblivious to the danger that lurked in the shadows. They talked and joked, their voices carrying on the still night air. The path wound its way through the dense undergrowth, leading deeper into the heart of the forest. The hikers followed it blindly, trusting in its familiarity. They had been this way before, had never encountered anything more threatening than a stray deer or a startled rabbit. But tonight was different. Tonight, the forest held its breath. The trees seemed to press closer, their branches reaching out like grasping claws. The air grew colder, heavier, as if a storm were brewing. The hikers shivered, pulling their jackets tighter around them. One of them, a young woman named Sarah, paused. She felt a chill run down her spine, a sense of unease she couldn't shake. She turned, looking back at the path behind them. "Did you guys hear that?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. The other hikers stopped, turning to face her. "What's wrong, Sarah?" Sarah shook her head, trying to dismiss the feeling of dread. "I thought I heard something." They listened, but the forest was silent. The only sound was the beating of their own hearts. Then they saw it, a pair of eyes, glowing like hot coals. The eyes stared at them, unblinking, filled with a cold, predatory hunger. The hikers froze, their blood turning to ice. The creature took a step closer, emerging from the shadows. The hikers gasped, stumbling back in terror. Standing before them was a creature out of their worst nightmares. It was tall and gaunt, its body covered in feathers the color of midnight. Its arms were long and powerful, ending in razor-sharp talons. But it was the creature's face that truly terrified. It was a grotesque parody of a human face, twisted and deformed. Its eyes, glowing with an unnatural light, were filled with a cold, calculating intelligence. Its beak was sharp and hooked like that of a bird of prey. A low growl rumbled in its chest, a sound that promised violence. The creature moved with a terrifying grace, its movements fluid and silent. It circled the hikers, its eyes never leaving them. It was toying with them, savoring their fear. The hikers huddled together, their faces pale with terror. They were trapped, with nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. Sarah felt a scream rising in her throat, but no sound came out. She closed her eyes, bracing herself for the inevitable. The creature lunged. The creature struck with lightning speed, its talons slashing through the air. The hikers screamed, scattering in all directions. The creature let out a deafening shriek, echoing through the trees. It had chosen its target. The unfortunate hiker, Ben, tripped and fell. The creature was upon him, its talons sinking into his flesh. The other hikers ran blindly, desperately through the forest. They could hear the creature moving behind them. Sarah ran until she could run no more. She collapsed behind a fallen tree trunk, her chest heaving, her legs screaming in protest. She listened, her heart pounding in her ears, but the sound of pursuit had faded. She was alone. She slowly got to her feet, her body trembling with exhaustion and fear. The forest was silent, the only sound the gentle rustling of leaves in the breeze. She looked around, her eyes scanning the shadows, but there was no sign of the creature. It was gone. She took a step back, then another, her eyes darting nervously around her. She had to get out of here. She had to find her friends, but which way was out? She had lost all sense of direction. She started walking, her pace slow and cautious. She kept to the shadows, her eyes constantly searching for any sign of movement. The forest was alive with unseen eyes. She could feel it. She was being watched. The forest was a labyrinth, a maze of twisted trees and tangled undergrowth. Sarah wandered aimlessly, her hope fading. The sun was setting, casting long, eerie shadows. She stumbled over a tree root, falling to her knees. She lay there, her strength gone. She was lost and terrified. Then she heard it. A faint sound carried on the wind. She lifted her head, straining to listen. A man's voice calling her name. She ran towards the sound. She burst through a thicket and found her friends. They rushed to her, engulfing her in a hug. As they made their way out of the forest, their pace quickened by fear and adrenaline, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. She kept looking over her shoulder, her eyes searching the shadows, but she couldn't see anything. The forest was silent. The only sound the crunch of leaves beneath their feet. The sun had set, and darkness was closing in around them. The air grew colder, the shadows deeper. They were being watched. She could feel it. She stopped, turning to face the darkness behind them. "What is it, Sarah?" one of her friends asked, his voice tight with anxiety. She opened her mouth to answer, but the words caught in her throat. She could see it now, a pair of eyes glowing like hot coals in the darkness at the edge of the trees. The eyes stared at them, unblinking, filled with a cold, predatory hunger. The creature was back, and this time it wouldn't be denied its prey.